Peace and love, family. Welcome to U.S. Political Prisoners, and you brought to you by Black Power Media. If this is your first time being on Black Power Media, please make sure you subscribe, get alert to these great programs that Black Power Media has, and also share with others so that we can continue to promote this powerful and important platform because our platform is crucial to our liberation struggle. Today, we'll be focusing on Juneteenth. But before I get into any discussion, we have to honor uh, our former captured freedom fighter, now ancestor, Sekou O. Danga. And I want to say some words that he had said in 1982 so that I could let us reflect on who he was and what he was about, and rather what he is, right? Because his ideas remain with us in our heart and dear to us. And the sharpest expression of respect is the actions that we express and that we commit ourselves as Sekou did. Sekou was a man who made sacrifices for his people. He loved his people. He was a political prisoner for over 33 years. He was involved with the Black Panther Party as well as the Black Liberation Army. I learned so much from him. And just like me learning so much from him, he taught others. He was very patient, very genuine, very sincere, a man of integrity, a man who I have a great amount of respect for. So in Sekou's words, this is Sekou courtroom statement, 1982. Let me say at the outset of this statement that I am a Muslim and a new African freedom fighter. Both positions leave me out of the jurisdiction of this court and make these court proceedings null and void, illegal. As a Muslim, I am subject to the laws of the Quran, which clearly tells me to fight oppression, to enjoin what is right, and to forbid what is wrong. As a freedom fighter fighting for the freedom, liberation, and self-determination of my people, the United Nations Charter and all other legal bodies dealing with the subject of liberation of an oppressed people recognize my right to wage armed struggle against my oppressor. It is important to understand who I am and who our people are. I am the descendant of African slaves brought to this country in chains as captives of a brutal slave war waged against the African people. My people have been fighting for our survival, liberation, and self-determination since the first African was illegally kidnapped and enslaved for the profit and the pleasure of the European. We, the African descendants, are now called citizens of the United States, but like everything else, that has been forced on the African slaves and their descendants. We were never asked if that is what we wanted or needed. This title of citizen was forced upon us, but the rights that go along with this citizenship for the European American citizen were never given to the ex-slave and his descendants. I am not an American citizen. I am a victim of America. I am a citizen of the Republic of New Africa. I do not want to be an American citizen. America has proven itself to be the most devilish and barbarous people that has ever called themselves civilized. Black people in the United States are a colonized people and have always been a colonized people. What is meant by a colonized people? A colonized people is a people whose land, labor, and resources are controlled and exploited by another group of people. It makes the colonized dependent on the exploiting group, dependent on them for almost everything, their laws, their livelihood, their protection, their every way of life. Colonized people don't ask to be dependent. It is forced on them, usually with arms, as it was forced on my African forefathers. And it is with arms that their hold is usually broken by the oppressed people. The U.S. Declaration of Independence declares that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces are designed to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. On January 24th, 1979, the United States passed a specific resolution stating the General Assembly declares that freedom fighters captured during the struggle for liberation must be entitled to prisoner of war status in accordance with the relevant provisions of the Geneva Convention. In 1950, as part of this program of action to end colonialism, the General Assembly has specifically insisted that the captured anti-colonial freedom fighter may not be prosecuted as a criminal under the domestic law of the detaining colonial power, but must instead be treated in accordance with the relevant provisions of the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war. This resolution 2621, so as a prisoner of war, international law, which Article 6 of the United States Constitution states supersedes domestic law, prohibits me from being tried in a criminal court by the colonizing power, which the U.S. government is in relationship to the descendants of African slaves. So I do not recognize any legitimate right of this court to try me. My only participation in these proceedings will be to push for my legitimate political rights as a freedom fighter and prisoner of war, and to denounce these illegal proceedings in particular and the colonial government of the United States of America in general. All power to the righteous people, free the land, Sekou Odinga. So those are Sekou Odinga's words. And so Sekou Odinga mentioned himself being a prisoner of war. He was also a political prisoner. And I want to get into those two definitions before I get into the history of Juneteenth and political prisoner. These palm cards we were giving out for Curve Fest 2025, and I thought it was very important because as we did outreach, we would engage in the community, letting the community know what a political prisoner is, what a prisoner of war is. So now they are conscious of these terms and how it relates to their right to self-determination. So political prisoner, a person who is held in confinement because of their support for people struggling for freedom from an oppressive government or against its oppressive policies, or participating in an organization involved in such a freedom struggle. Prisoner of war, a national combatant of an oppressed nation held in confinement by the oppressor nation because of their participation in an organization fighting for self-determination, independence, or national liberation from the oppressor nation, or for support of or identity with that struggle. So those are the two definitions. I just want us to reflect on that because that's something that I have to implement into this this platform so that we make sure that we continue to have that understanding of a political prisoner and a prisoner of war. So when we engage with people and we write to people, we have a clear understanding of who we're writing to and why we're writing to. And when we talk to people, we want to let people know what a political prisoner is, what a prisoner of war is, so they understand that relationship to their everyday life, how their life came to have improvements. So understanding the significance of June 19th, 1865. So I'm going to get into Juneteenth, the history of it. The historical legacy of Juneteenth. This is found on the National Museum of African American History and Culture. So on this site, it says Freedom's Eve and Watch Night Services. On Freedom's Eve, or the eve of January 1st, 1863, the first Watch Night Services took place. On that night, enslaved and free African Americans gathered in churches and private homes all across the country, awaiting news that the Emancipation Proclamation had taken effect. At the stroke of midnight, prayers were answered as all enslaved people in Confederate states were declared legally free. Union soldiers, many of whom were Black, marched onto plantations and across cities in the South, reading small copies of the Emancipation Proclamation, spreading the news of freedom in Confederate states. Only through the 13th Amendment did emancipation and slavery throughout the United States. Understanding the significance of June 19th, 1865, but not everyone in Confederate territory would immediately be free. Even though the Emancipation Proclamation was made effective in 1863, it could not be implemented in places still under Confederate control. As a result, in the westernmost Confederate state of Texas, enslaved people would not be free until much later. Freedom finally came on June 19th, 1865, when some 2,000 Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay, Texas. The Army announced that the more than 250,000 enslaved Black people in the state were free by executive decree. This day came to be known as Juneteenth by the newly freed people in Texas. So just to give you some idea of what this day means, and how we need to reflect on it and how its relationship is to political prisoners. My brother?
Peace. I am Tyreek. I am a Black Panther. I'm a former member of the Black Liberation Army. I spent 17 years in numerous American death camp prisons as a political prisoner of war. I am happy you have joined Frank and me to discuss Juneteenth. And I just want to add that Juneteenth brings to mind one of the quotes Malcolm X left us with. He said, "Of all your studies, history is a subject that will best reward your efforts." When we study all the historical happenings that have us talking about June 19th, 1865, you will learn that Black people, slave and free, played a very important role in shaping America. And only political prisoners, revolutionary leaders, will bring to you the vital information you need to know. How many appointed leaders have told you the North was on the verge of losing the Civil War? The emancipation was not a single Abraham Lincoln project. Congress first passed a law that enabled Black people to join the Union Army. Congress also passed a law that gave the green light to the Union soldiers to take in runaway slaves and to stop the practice of holding slaves and returning them to their masters. When these congressional decisions were made, slaves almost instantly got the word. Historians have estimated that about 25% of the slaves abandoned their plantation. Slaves running off from the plantation deprived the South of a vital labor force. The racist Confederacy learned their system could not survive without us Black people. So we want to think about those things. We just don't want to think about Juneteenth, that Lincoln freed the slaves. There was more to it than that, and people they focused their single attention on Lincoln, and there was much more that is involved in the Juneteenth celebration. So we want to do the revolutionary thing. We want to look at Juneteenth, and in looking at it, we want to shine light on all of the happenings that was going on that make Juneteenth an important day.
Yes. So we know that there's going to be celebrations, there's going to be commemorations, right? There's a distinction between the celebration and the commemoration. Celebration, you're engaging in cultural activities, you're dancing, you're eating, you're purchasing different items to recognize that particular time, but it doesn't really relate to what action that you're going to take. Now, when you have a commemoration is recognizing what happened and recognize what needs to be done with that historical knowledge, with that understanding, because we have to be empowered by our ability to know our history. It has to be used as something that we're going to take and address a current issue. Right now, we have political prisoners. We have Mumia Abu-Jamal, we have Joseph Bowen, we have Ronald Reed, we have the Virgin Island Three, and we have to think about their sacrifices, their commitment. We have the right to political prisoners. We have to be a part of formations. If we don't like the formation that's there, we gotta form our own. Because I spoke to your comrade, your co-defendant, and the brother told me that he had two people that was involved with his defense committee. So we don't have to look at no big numbers, right? You have two people that could do the work of maybe 20 people, and use those two people to put forth an idea about a political prisoner, somebody who needs to have a voice in our community. And we build those relationships in our community around our political prisoners, making sure that we serve the community in the spirit of the political prisoner, in the spirit of commitment and sacrifice, in the spirit of identifying love as being action, not something that you just say. So my first question to you, brother, like I always do when you are on this platform, which I always appreciate, what is your overview of Juneteenth?
My overview is that we have to shine a light on Juneteenth and shine the light so that all the actions that are related to Juneteenth are shown, and we can see that and notice. And we want to know that when revolutionaries have a discussion of Juneteenth, the discussion is different from the discussion that will be held by appointed leaders, leaders that are recognized by the state. And as I say, Juneteenth, it was issued Juneteenth followed the Emancipation Proclamation, and that's what we're basically talking about. And the Emancipation Proclamation was issued on January 1, 1863. And at that time, the North was losing the war. A lot of people don't know that. The North was really scheduled to win the war and win the war in a short period of time. The North had such resources in their favor that they should have won the war within a week after the war started. And they should have definitely won the war during the first battle. The big battle between the North and the South occurred shortly after the war was started. And the North won that war. They won that battle. But the Northern general didn't pursue the correct course. He hesitated. He defeated the South and allowed them to escape. And by him allowing them to escape, he had the troops to engage them, to further engage them, and to totally defeat them. But he didn't. And that enabled the war to go on longer than what it should have. And then come to find out, at the beginning of the war, and the generals was deciding what side to be on, the North or the South. Many of the best generals, most of them, if not all of them, went to the South, and only the North only had one or two very good generals, and it was that fact of the South having the best generals that enabled them to fight as long as they did. Actually, they was pursuing a lost cause, and their intent was to communicate to the Union Army and the Union government that it would be too costly to pursue holding the South in the Union, and that they should let the South pursue their independent course and pursue their sovereignty and that sort of thing. But that is what was going on when the Emancipation Proclamation was entered into. And Lincoln knew this, and the Congress knew this, and that's why they passed these laws. They passed a law telling the Union soldiers, when the slaves come to the Union side, don't stop the practice of holding the slaves for the master to come and pick them up, and stop that. And when the Emancipation Proclamation was initially proclaimed, it did not affect the South, because the South was a different country. The South was like Mexico. It's like Lincoln giving an order for Mexicans, and that didn't apply to Mexico, because that's a different country. And that's the way the South was at that time. So that, but when Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and also they were receiving the slaves and not holding them and returning them to their masters, that enabled the slaves to leave the plantation and head for the Union lines. And as it turned out, historians estimate that 25% of the enslaved Africans in the South, they ran away from the plantation, and they deprived the South of a vital labor force, and that significantly contributed to the South losing the war. And then the Emancipation Proclamation, a lot of people don't know, Lincoln also said at that particular time that the Congress had passed a law that enabled Blacks and former slaves to enter the Union Army. And then 200,000 Black people joined the Union Army, And of those 200,000, 40,000 was killed during the battles. And so that 200,000 soldiers made a difference. It took the North over the top in terms of winning the war, because Lincoln was very concerned about a few more battles, and the North would have been totally defeated. And so that's why he had to conceal that from the public by waiting until January 1. And he waited until really after they had won a battle. And that was to say that the North was pretty much holding its own, but they wasn't holding their own. They only just won that battle. And that's why Lincoln then issued the Emancipation Proclamation. But they were not in no shape until Lincoln read the Emancipation Proclamation and introduced the 200,000 Black soldiers. And the 200,000 Black soldiers is what enabled the Union Army to march to victory. But a lot of people don't know that. They just keep saying that Lincoln freed the slaves. No, the slaves freed the slaves. And it's important to know that the introduction of Black people with guns, willing to be killed and willing to kill, that made the difference. And that is what freed the slaves, and that is what we should know. And that is what our political prisoners, the message our political prisoners are taking to our people. And that is not the message that appointed leaders and leaders recognized by the administration. That's not the message that is being taken to the people. But people should know that.
Yes, thank you as always for elaborating on a particular part of history, right? Because when we know as much as we can about a particular part of our history, we know how it can be utilized, right? Our history is a weapon. It's a reminder of where we came from, what we had to endure, and what we overcame, right? So we could use that in 2026, right? So tomorrow, when you're engaged in a celebration or a commemoration, right? You talk about political prisoners, talk about who they are and why we need to get them free. Because any part of our struggle came from people committing themselves to take it as far as they could. And those people became martyrs, and those people also became political prisoners, right? And we have to recognize them. We have to make sure that they get that proper respect, right? And the way you properly respect anybody who made a commitment and a sacrifice for you is the life you lead, right? Is the decision that you need to make dealing with issues that require accountability. Because how does change comes to be, right? Change comes to be by people standing up, people being involved, people confronting the issue, not ignoring it, not running from it, not diverting from it, but confronting it, organizing, and deciding that they're going to take a definitive position when it comes to a particular idea. So thank you, brother, for informing us the way you did about that, about this historical moment. My next question: how should the idea of political prisoners be inserted into the recognition of Juneteenth?
Well, I'm thinking that the introduction of 200,000 uh, Black persons armed with weapons and willing to die and willing to kill, that provided, I guess, one of the a happy period for persons, Black people living at that time, because those soldiers protected Black people from the former masters who was upset at having lost the slaves, and they protected them from the formations that had been started. The Ku Klux Klan was started after 1865 or something, 1867, but they was not terrorizing Black people to the extent that they were when the president ordered the redeployment of the Black soldiers from the South. So that we want to know our political prisoners want to bring about the same feelings of joy and relief that the Black soldiers had at that time of the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. People felt really good and they felt relieved. They knew that people would protect them if they were subjected to any harm or threatened. The Black soldiers was there to protect them. And that is what the political prisoners are doing, because especially at this time, the government of the United States is letting Black people know that they are not going to protect us. Not only are they not going to protect us, they have been killing us and they're going to continue to kill us. And we have to do like back then, we have to have armed people to protect ourselves from the groups of crazy people that wish us harm. And so that our political prisoners are those persons who are willing to die and to kill to protect Black people, to protect our elders, our children, our women, our men. The Black soldiers are there to protect them. And this is what was happening back during the day, during the time of the Emancipation Proclamation, the Civil War, when they had the Black troops. And we want to know that we have to look to ourselves. We have to look to ourselves. And the government is letting us know that they intend to encourage the white mobs, the Ku Klux Klan, and the White Brotherhood, or whatever they call these guys that wear the hats and everything. They intend to do us harm, and the government is saying they're giving these people the green light to harm us. So the government is not going to protect us. And our political prisoners was providing the protection of our people in our neighborhoods. And it is revolutionaries who are going to provide the protection for us in the future. So we have to know that, and know that the government is serious about not protecting us, and they are serious about encouraging people to attack us and kill us, because the government needs poor whites who should be fighting on the side of the poor, but they are fighting on the side of the government, and the government is trying to provoke Black people to attack the poor whites, to get the poor whites to be on the side of the government. And that's what the government figured they have to do in order to survive. They have to keep the Blacks and the whites separated, and doing that, they have to encourage the poor whites to attack the poor Blacks. And the only relief that we're going to have, only protection we're going to have, is for revolutionaries and do today what our political prisoners did in the past: protect us from harm, keep us out of harm's way.
Absolutely, and identifying our political prisoners, knowing what they did, why they did it, lets us understand that any aspect of our struggle, we need to include political prisoners. Sekou Odinga, I'm going to go back to him. His words, his ideas, they continue to be relevant, right? Sekou Odinga said that the same thing that we're fighting today, they were fighting back then. And so until we in a position where our self-determination is protected, it's at its highest level, we're going to continue to have freedom, capture freedom fighters. And so we need to have a complete systemic change. That change has to be a change that reflective of the working class being the nucleus of the society, and being identified as the nucleus of society. Their rights, their issues, their ideas, their concerns, food, clothing, shelter must be secured, right? That's always possible, but unfortunately, in a capitalist society, everything is driven by profit. So it's profit before people. So those morals and things that are in existence are compromised because of the idea or the issue to focus on profit. My next question is, beyond the celebration and commemoration of Juneteenth, what work which should we be inspired to do, especially around our political prisoners?
Well, in view of today's social and political atmosphere, we should be doing what's necessary to protect ourselves, as I pointed out. And we should know that our political prisoners were the ones who were really involved in the effort to protect us. And so we have to know that. And we have to know that we are in a situation, a capitalist situation. And the capitalist economy is an economy like back in 1865, 1863, that economy was run by gangsters, and the present day capitalists are gangsters, and they intend to kill us and harm us to keep the capitalist system going, to keep us making money for them. They don't care how many of us they kill, how many of us they hurt, how many of our children they hurt and brainwash. That's a real serious matter. Our people are being brainwashed from the time we grow up and born, and we are being fed a select diet of information to enable us to peacefully work for the capitalist gangsters, and so that they can make this money. And so we have to know that we are money makers for the gangsters. And once we complain about our situation not being as good as it should be, the gangsters intend to kill us to keep us quiet. And because they don't want us to be hollering and screaming about how we're suffering, and that hollering and screaming can contribute to people getting organized and depriving the gangsters of their streams of money. So that we want to know that we have to get organized. And once we get organized, our persons are going to become political prisoners. And we have to know that it's essential for us to support our political prisoners in order for them and future revolutionaries to come forward to protect our communities and protect everyone in our community. So we want to have that as our inspiration. We want to know that the difference of armed persons, Black men and women, armed men and women, made a difference. And during the Reconstruction period, it was a high point. I'm sure it was considered like comparatively a happy point compared to the drudgery of slavery that we went through. I'm sure that the Reconstructive period, for a short period, we had some feelings of happiness and relief. And we can again enjoy feelings of happiness and relief, but we got to know we have to protect ourselves. The government is letting us know they are not going to protect us. They are going to encourage people to attack us so that they can have the poor whites on the side of the government and on the side of the billionaires, because it's only a few of them, and it's essential. It's only a few of them. So it's essential that they get the poor whites on their side. And in getting the poor whites on their side means doing things to us to keep us from obtaining our freedom and not being available to be exploited. So that we want to know our political prisoners are a essential component to the survival of our group and to the happiness of our families and our communities.
Yeah, so with those words, we're in this powerful, important episode. You know, whatever you decide to do tomorrow, if you are celebrating or involved in commemoration, please keep our political prisoners close to your heart and make time to write to a political prisoner. We're always looking for people to be involved in formations around political prisoners. There's a formation for Kamal Siddiqui. There's a formation for the Virgin Island Three. There's a formation for Mumia Abu Jamal. If you're interested, I provide my contact information at 646-543-0720. Just text me and say that I'm interested in doing some work. I'm interested in participating in a formation. Again, that's 646-543-0720. You know, those questions I asked about what should be celebrated or not, that's a personal and political choice. Right, I make the choice to be engaged in a commemoration formation, a commemoration event/program that allows me to understand that I am coming to express solidarity with brothers and sisters who are conscious about what we need to do politically, and the fact that we need to set aside our differences and express solidarity. And Friday is an opportunity to do that. So whenever you have the opportunity, I think you should act on it, right? And if you think that we should be doing something else, organize that, but take some action. Be serious about what's happening, understanding that the future is now. Our children are watching us. They're looking for answers. They want direction, and let's give them clear direction. Let's give them clear answers that we know that we can take leadership on. With that being said, don't forget our political prisoners. Don't let them die in prison. May the strong and everlasting revolutionary spirit of Sekou Odinga be a part of your being, be a part of what organized action that you are. Be like Sekou, love the people.
Be like Sekou, and know that those runaway slaves and those black soldiers is what defeated the Confederacy, and they are the central components to the winning of the Civil War, the runaway slaves and the black soldiers. So when you think about Juneteenth, think about that also. Power to the people, free them all, and remember, say cool,